Coming to you live from the Minding Our Business Financial Academy classroom. Today we want to talk about how do you manage a budget where you only make $50,000 a year? What does that look like, and how do you allocate your funds based on the framework that we teach here at the Minding Our Business Academy? So let's start out with, what do you do? So if this is you really probably thinking you have a money problem. Really, you have a margin problem. Why? Because your margins are so tight, every dollar has to work harder, and you don't have a lot of room for mistakes. At this level of income, we're talking about roughly about $20 an hour. Your stability is the goal. A lot of times we want to jump into wealth building, but understand that there's various phases that you must go through. And right now, if you're making $20 an hour, roughly $50,000 a year, you're at that phase of life. Maybe you're a young adult, just graduated university or high school, got your first job, you're making $20 an hour, and you're trying to branch out on your own. Or maybe you're an adult and you live in the Midwest where it's harder to find the higher incomes that are readily available on both coasts, on the East and West Coast. And you may be working a regular job trying to take care of your family. How do you make it work? So why is this important, Lionel? Why are you sharing this with us today? Because I want to show you how a system is what you need first in order to ease the pressure of your situation. If you don't have a system, it's very hard to get out of this phase of living where you're just living paycheck to paycheck and struggling to survive. So let's break it down. $20 an hour, $50,000 a year, roughly. Now, your gross monthly income is probably about $4,166.67. Now, of course, Uncle Sam has got to get their cut. You got to pay your taxes. Now, depending on what state you live in, depending on what deductions you have, that could be a very different number. But we're going to keep it basic, and we're just going to look at the average tax rate, federal tax rate. So you're probably spending about $766.66 in taxes being deducted out of that $4,166 every single month. That leaves you a net of $3,400.01. That is your net. Now we're going to jump into the 10-10-80 framework, and I'm going to show you how to apply that framework to this income and how to allocate the funds. The first part of the 10-10-80 framework, 10% will go to giving. So that's $416.67. If you're a person of faith, that is going to go to your home church in the form of tithes and offering. If you are of a different faith and you want to just participate in charitable giving, you want to help out ministries and people who are actually less fortunate than you are, that is that amount for you every single month. So if you get paid twice a month, that's $200 out of every paycheck. $208 roughly out of every paycheck. Then we want to talk about 10% going to savings. So the same exact amount, $416.67, like we rounded it up, roughly about $208 coming out of every paycheck. I know that's significant, but if you don't begin to save money, it will be extremely difficult for you to get out of this phase and grow your income, invest and find assets that will help increase your income. So that is the first part of the 10-10-80 framework. 10% goes to giving, 10% goes to saving. Now we're going to live on the other 80%. So let me adjust my positioning here and let's get into how I would manage the 80% that you have left over. So let's look at what that number is. $2,566.67 is what we're responsible for managing. So our household operation, we're going to allocate roughly about 50% of that number into managing our household. Because our income is still very small, we're going to increase our percentage so that we could live in this inflationary time. So we're looking at roughly about $1,283.34 is what you have available to run your household every month. If you're a young adult, you might want to take on roommates. If you are a little older and you're just in a circumstance where this is all the income you can make, maybe you have a spouse, a significant other, maybe there are children involved who are of working age, and you're finding a communal way of living, because for most Americans, living on $1,283.34 every month is extremely hard to do. So we're just laying out the ideal percentages, but I'll show you along the way different areas where you can begin to adjust your percentages so you have more money to live on, so you can afford your rent and or mortgage, you can afford food and transportation and all the other necessities you have for life. So we'll just cap that at 50% for now. But again, you may have to think about creative ways of living and partnering with other individuals to bring down your living expense. So now we need something to maintain our assets that we may have. You may have a car that you're using every day to get to and from work. You probably don't have a ton of assets right now. So we're just going to dedicate 6.5% of your income into your maintenance fund. That's going to equate to $160.42 every single month. Roughly about $80 out of every paycheck you're going to set aside in a separate account for those emergencies that will arise in your life, right? Your car needs brakes, it needs a tune-up, any other emergency that might pop up in your life. Maybe you have a copay, a medical issue that may be going on. So you want to begin to save up some money in that category for yourselves. In the summation, I'll add a graphic that shows you what these totals are for the year, but let's continue through this monthly budget and get you grounded. Next, if you know me, then you know that lifestyle needs to be pushed down in our priority scale. So we've prioritized our giving, we've prioritized our saving, we've prioritized living, our household, maintaining our transportation and our lifestyle and our health. Now we can get into the actual lifestyle, entertainment, and all the other things. For most people who are at this income, they're probably spending the bulk of their money on their household and their lifestyle, and all this other stuff that I'm talking about seems foreign and or unmanageable or not doable for them. But I want to show you that when you break these things down into percentages, you can actually create margin and you can actually see where your dollars are going. So we want to put some parameters around our lifestyle spending. So we're going to keep that to about 25% of our income. That's roughly $641.67. That's $320 out of every single paycheck. Now, if you live out west or you live on the East Coast and your rent is much higher, your cost of living is higher, you can reduce this to 20% or even 15% and add the additional funds back up into your household operations so you can afford to live a little more comfortably. Maybe you reduce your subscriptions, you reduce your dining out to maybe one day per week or one day a month, just so you can have a comfortable and stable operation of your household. Now, if you've acquired some debt, most Americans have some amount of debt, then we're going to dedicate, again, the same proration as the maintenance fund. 6.5% is what we're going to set aside to pay off our credit card debt, pay off your car note, or any other sort of debt that you may have. That's going to be $160.42 per month, roughly about $80 per paycheck we're setting aside for our debt repayment, right? Paying off those credit cards, any aggressive loans you may have. Many people at this income level may have payday loans and other sorts of predatory lenders involved in their life. We want to get them taken care of so then we can reallocate these dollars and resources either back into our household, or if you want to increase your lifestyle a little bit, live a little more comfortably, take care of yourself, you can do that as well too. Our final area, now this is the one everyone wants to jump into first, the investing. Why? Because I want to increase my income. There's no way I'm going to be able to live and retire and all those things on just $20 an hour. So I think that $320.82 is the number, which is 12.5% of your income that is going to be allocated to investing. So it's roughly going to be about $160 per pay period that you're going to allocate to investing. Now that's really aggressive. You're saying, Lionel, that's a lot of money to put into an investment account. You're right. If you're a young person, you don't have a ton of debt, you're willing to live a smaller lifestyle, then this is ideal. You want to front load those investments as much as possible. There's tons of statistics that show if you begin investing as early as 25 years old, you could do that for 10 years and then allow that money to compound over 30 years, and you would actually have more money than an older person who's investing significantly more money with a shorter timeline. So I have the investing sources set aside here, but if you have a lot of debt, if your household expenses are high because, again, you may live in California, you may live in New York, you may live in the Miami area in Florida, then you can reduce your investing amount. If you work for a company that matches your 401k, you can reduce this to somewhere between 3 to 6%. Get that 3 to 6% matching funds from your employer, and you're right back at the 12% actual dollars going in, even though you may only be contributing 3 to 6%. And then that allows you to increase your household operations to 53, 55% of your income. So I hope this was helpful for you. I have lived at this level. When I was in my late 20s, that was the amount of money I was actually living on, raising a family in the California Bay Area before I got involved in real estate and really began to accelerate my income. But the key here is to have a system in place, to know your numbers, know the percentages, and know where the margin lies in your budget. I hope this was helpful for you. Join us in the MOB Academy for more stewardship and more budget concrete tools that you can use to create a system, build margin, and begin to be a faithful steward. If this was helpful for you, check out some of our other playlists where we give you concrete systems, we give you the percentages and the numbers you need to manage your income and your resources. If you make way more money than this, then check out the video that goes through how to manage $100 all the way up to a $400,000 budget. If there's a young person in your life who could benefit from this information, then share this video with them.